For a long time, I didn't believe it would happen. I listened to the small voices in my head that told me I couldn't do it. And maybe some of you have some of those small voices that try to speak to you too. Mine went something like this. It's like, who are you to think you have something to say that anyone wants to read? You are 40 years old. Aren't you a little old to start a new career? And also, you haven't even written fiction in 20 years. Now, that part of what my small voice said was actually true. I had not written fiction since college, and that's what I want to talk to you a little bit about quickly. I went to college at Princeton University, and that was a jarringly new world for me. I was born in the Philippines. We moved to Wisconsin when I was 6, and I went to Princeton as a work-study kid, taking on a lot of debt, a lot of family sacrifice to be there, in one of the richest universities in the world. And I never thought that I would be a writer or major in creative writing, because that wasn't practical for someone like me. But I wanted to take a class, because there are all these famous writers like Toni Morrison teaching there at the time. And you have to apply, and so I finally got into a class with a writer named Russell Banks, who recently passed away. What I didn't know, because I'd never taken a workshop before, is that you don't just write stories, you have to show them to your classmates, and they critique them in front of your face. And that made me really nervous. So I didn't volunteer to go first or second or third or even fourth, I think. And looking back, I wish I had gone earlier, because what happened is that over the weeks, I would listen to my classmates, many of whom had gone to fancy private schools in Chicago or New York or boarding schools. I'd never even heard of those before college, on the East Coast. And their stories were so good. They were sophisticated, and they were knowing, and they were well-paced, and I was like, I can't do that. Now, I did. I wrote my story, I submitted it, and I had it critiqued. And looking back as a 45-year-old, it was not a bad critique. There were some nice things said, there were some critical things said, but for 19-year-old me, who did not believe that she belonged at that table and was good enough to sit at that table, it was too much. So I think I lasted another week, and then I dropped out of the class. I just made up an excuse. And I didn't write fiction again until I turned 40. I mean, that's crazy. And I guess my message to you today is that you belong at that table. You belong at any table. That you don't need permission from anyone to raise your voice, to tell your story, to write a book, except for yourself. And that sometimes the cages that hold us back and hold us in are the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves. And my deepest wish for you, with your whole lives ahead of you, is that you know this deep in your gut and with your whole heart, that you belong. And when you tell your story, you start from there. Thank you. So I've actually never told people I dropped out of it. My parents don't know that, so you don't have to say that widely. I now just want to welcome tonight's final group of readers from the class of 2019.